For 100 years, a fly that lives on blood has protected African wildlife from its most deadly enemy, mankind. Today, the Tsetse fly is seen as the best hope for saving Africa's wild animals from destruction. The Tsetse fly has been in Africa for millions of years. In that time, its wildlife has become immune to the lethal trypanosome parasites the fly injects into their blood. But relatively new arrivals, people and domestic animals, are not immune. They suffer a painful death when bitten by an infected fly from a disease known as trypanosomiasis.
Here's one. Caught it. This fly is more poisonous than a snake. It will kill anyone who comes into the forest.
The Nguruman Plain in southern Kenya's Rift Valley. It's part of a vast, semi-arid region inhabited by the Maasai. This is cattle country. The Maasai usually keep their herds on this plain, driving them on to wherever the best grasses can be found. But this year, there's a serious drought. It's mid-March, and the grass is all but exhausted. Maasai Ole Mpese has around 200 head of cattle, but with the lack of grass, and are not producing milk, and he has 4 wives and 17 children.
We never used to have droughts as bad as this when I was a small boy. The good days when we had lots of rain have come to an end.
Just one day's walk away, there's an escarpment, rich in wildlife and grasses. Lower down, towards the foot of the escarpment, there's a belt of rich forest, fed by groundwater draining from the hills. Maasai could take his herd here, but he has off.
You see that forest on the escarpment? That's the home of the Tsetse flies. If we take our animals anywhere near it, they will die.
The Maasai have seen plenty of droughts in the past, but Meze's oldest wife, Nokirimat, thinks there's more to this drought than simple lack of rain.
When we were young, the people on this earth were few, and our animals were few. So they didn't finish the grass so quickly. The population was smaller because men didn't have lots of wives and children. With few animals, you could last the whole year round without having to take them to places flies.
Dr. Peter Stevenson is a British aid scientist looking at ways of improving the health of livestock here. Despite the deteriorating conditions, he maintains the traditional nomadic way of grazing is still the best option.
Really, in this sort of environment, these dry lands, the only way you can produce food efficiently is on the hoof. You can't grow crops in this area. It's too dry. And keeping cows, sheep and goats is the most efficient way of producing food. I can't see that this is going to change in the foreseeable future.
While Maasai and his family struggle on the dried-out plains, the escarpment, protected by the disease-carrying tsetse flies, has been left largely undisturbed. But for how long? It's not only the Maasai who want to come into these woodlands. Kenya has one of the world's fastest rising populations, and people from all over the country are on the move to find a piece of land of their own. During the 1980s, in an attempt to help the Maasai, British scientists perfected a trap to catch the flies.
Ungu trap. In fact, we've developed that Unguruman for catching tsetse flies. The tsetse flies were initially attracted to the trap by these odour attractants. This is the cow's urine that you've seen collected.
For 6 years, a network of 250 traps spanned the foot of the escarpment.
Into there, up, and then they're up into the cage, at which point they've got problems, because it's hot in there. And I don't think you'd last long in a plastic bag. They don't either.
The system worked so well that within a few months, the fly population was cut by over 99%. It meant that Maasai cattle grasses here in times of drought. But it was not only the Maasai the traps helped. Mary is one of thousands of Kikuyus and people from other tribes from as far afield as Tanzania moving into these forests. It took Mary and her family 6 years to clear the trees and chase out the wild animals.
The Tsetse fly traps made it easier for us to move into the forests, but now our clearing of the woods is also getting rid of the Tsetse flies.
But already there are signs that the clearing of the woods may, in the long term, benefit no one.
In the crops were good, but the soil has quickly become very poor. Now we have to work much harder to get a smaller return.
Not everyone was in favor of controlling the flies. Conservationists argued Africa needs the tsetse fly as a guardian of the wild.
Wildlife has pretty much entirely disappeared from this area that you see behind me now because the tsetse traps have allowed the intrusion of cattle and sheep and goats, donkeys, dogs and people, and that has increased the pressure on the wildlife, decreased their habitat. Certain species would have maybe starved as a result of competition with goats, poached or pressured out. If you want to increase the number of cattle that you have, the tsetse traps have been an exceptionally good thing because the cattle no longer have to compete with the wildlife.
But the tsetse fly traps were abandoned when the project came to an end and the scientists behind it had to leave.
We've got a trap here where only one thing's gone wrong. One of the poles has fallen over, but that has made it, as you can see, completely useless. Unfortunately, these traps have got to be properly maintained and properly checked. Many things can go wrong with them, and if there's the slightest fault, you can find that you're not catching any flies. This is the thickest part of the woodland where flies are at their highest numbers, and if you're going to control flies with these traps, you've got to have a good system of maintaining them.
With the end of the tsetse traps, the flies returned, together with the cattle disease. With no sign of rain, Maasai's herd is getting very thin. If they don't get some decent grass soon, they may become altogether too weak to move on.
Right, that's it. We are moving out of here. This place is finished. To look for grass. Children, help me load the donkey. Bring me the box. Bring the calabashes. Things really have changed. It's not like long ago when you could find grass everywhere. Some say when the animals are sick, we too become sick, especially the children. They end up sharing our animals' diseases.
This is our last chance to save. The droughts got terrible down on the plains. Let's see what the escarpment has to offer. We are going to struggle with the Tsetse fly disease. There's drought on the plains. There are Tsetse flies up here. You can't win.
This is wildlife country, with buffalo, elands, bushbucks, and even the occasional lion, if you're unlucky. But it's rich with the grass Maasai's cattle are so much in need of.
There's no place we consider to be off limits for our cattle. We take them to wherever we can find grass, flies or no flies.
Although the grass here is good, more and more cattle are crowding into the same area, forcing them and the wildlife ever closer together. So the risk to Maasai's herd of being crossing Tsetse flies feeding on the blood of infected wildlife is greater than ever. The Tsetse flies breed in the shade of trees, laying their larvae in soft soil. Adult flies spend most of the day at rest, only moving short distances to feed on the blood of wildlife and cattle. Maasai's herd has never been more at risk.
The flies may kill our cattle, but they would die from hunger if we didn't take them here. We have no other choice.
Dusk. Maasai's wife, Nakiramit, has been walking for 12 hours. They arrive at one of the or cattle enclosures they keep near the escarpment. Maasai and the rest of the cattle won't get here until well after nightfall. For everyone, not least the cattle, it's been a long day. Just how many of Maasai's herd will fall victim to the tsetse flies and trypanosomiasis, only time will tell. Over 300 miles to the northeast lies Busia, close to the shores of Lake Victoria. Every few years, the farming communities here are disrupted by invasions of tsetse flies. But here, the flies carry a different type of parasite, one that does not attack cattle, but people, and they are lethal.
I was washing here 2 years ago like this. When I was... It left a black mark on my shoulder. We didn't know what it was. We had never seen it before. And it itched like mad. A week later, I was sick with fever, with pains everywhere, and nearly died.
Alfred Abita lives in the village of Apatit. 2 years ago, about half of the people here became mysteriously ill when the village was invaded by thousands of flies, catching its people, most of whom had never seen a tsetse fly before, unaware of the danger. All around him, villagers and other family members started falling ill with symptoms suspiciously like malaria. Alfred's wife, Jane, also after she was bitten on the head.
I got so sick, I couldn't even talk. I was a dying person. My whole body got sick and started swelling up all over. My hands, my ears, even my face.
Me too, I was so weak. There was nothing I could do. Whatever I tried, it was useless. I was either shivering cold or boiling hot. We tried everything, but nothing worked.
And then we went to a clinic. They treated us for malaria, but we just got worse. Then I went to see a witch doctor. He told us, we've been bewitched. We had to slaughter goats and chickens and ended up having to pay his fees.
When the witch doctor himself got sick, he started accusing us of bewitching him. We all started accusing each other. One by one, they were all dropping down. Then my nephew took me to the sleeping sickness clinic for a test. It turned out positive.
After long and painful treatment, Alfred and his wife recovered, but it was too late for 7 members of their family and friends in the village. They died without even knowing the cause of their illness. The tsetse flies had invaded under the cover of vegetation along the rivers and streams flowing into Lake Victoria. Massive insecticides cleared the area of flies and disease, but the danger of reinvasion still lingers, and already there is a full sense of security.
We are safe now. Nowadays, if you are sick, you know it's because someone has bewitched you, not because of the Tsetse.
This is the man who saved Alfred and Jane's lives. He's not a doctor or an expert. He just happened to be aware of the danger and took them to the sleeping sickness clinic. No amount of pesticides could permanently get rid of the flies. What was needed was to motivate people. So he got the villagers together and wrote a play.
The idea came to me because I experienced people going to the witch doctors, strange flies biting us. So that's why I sat down and started writing this play.
With the help of a young aid worker, a play was devised that could travel to all of the villages in the region. A play about the dangers of tsetse flies was especially useful for a community where most people can't read. It shows what happens when infected flies attack cattle and people, why sleeping sickness cannot be cured by witch doctors, and what to do if you're bitten by a tsetse fly. And comes complete with a send-up of an English aid worker.
My worker will also help Deborah and Tsetse understand whether people think Nagana is a big problem. Thank you.
The play has made all the difference to people like me who can't read. It opened our eyes, and now we take more care.
Meanwhile, the sleeping sickness clinic that saved Alfred and Jane's lives lies empty, ready for the next outbreak that could come at any time. Just where and when, no one knows. Three weeks after driving his herd up the escarpment, Maasai heard that some rains had fallen on the plains. He and his family out of the tsetse belt to the promise of grass with no flies. He lost several animals in the journey up the escarpment, those that were already too weak from hunger to make the arduous climb. But the survivors have fattened up on the rich grass. The question now is, how many of them will have been infected by the tsetse flies? Already, some animals, a young calf and some milk cows, are looking very sick.
Let's open your mouth and have a sniff. Smells bad to me. I'm telling you, this cow is not dying from drought, but escarpment disease. It speaks something up there. Maybe the Tsetse disease.
The next day, the signs are bad. Everyone's worst fears are confirmed when Pete Stevenson goes back to see how Maasai's sick cows are doing.
It couldn't get up. It's been trying to get up. It's dug itself into the ground. It was lying on that side, first of all. It's now gone on this side, finally died on this side. It's difficult in an animal that's been dead for a few hours as this had to be really precise about the state of anemia. But if you look at that mouth, you can see it's very pale, very little sign of blood there. If we move up to its eye, if we look in its eye here, see again very pale mucous membranes. I would strongly suspect that we're dealing with a case of trypanosomiasis here, which has come in on an animal that's originally in very poor condition. This animal probably picked up a trypanosome infection maybe only a week or 2 weeks ago, and it got so weak that it could no longer carry on. Yeah, we've arrived too late for this one. It was a really advanced case of trips. Even if we treated it, it might not have recovered. All they're going to get out of this animal is the hide, which now I think it's worth about 400 shillings. The rest will just be left for the dogs. David, let's just take a look at this one. I think it's still alive.
Even donkeys, the hardiest of African animals, are vulnerable. Nokidamat's donkey became infected on the journey.
Yep, just. Let's see if you can get a blood sample. We'll take a look at its blood. We've only picked up 1 or 2 positives while we've been here, but this may well be Tripp's case. It's going to be dead in a few seconds. Yeah, its heart stopped beating. Yeah. I would suspect that this donkey, when they moved into the thick bush, probably got bitten, and it's probably been sick for a couple of weeks, I should think. They've used this donkey to move their boma from the open land into the thick bush, and it's probably picked the infection up in the bush when it came into contact with the tsetse flies. Look at this. This is the donkey blood that we've just collected a few seconds ago. Already the red blood cells have sedimented right down to there. That's the top of the plasma there, fallen right down, very, very low. In a healthy donkey, we'd expect to see about half of the tube full with red blood cells. And it's now well down there. With a bit of spinning, it's going to get much, much lower. I'm surprised that donkey was still alive. Almost certainly trypanosomiasis. I can't think of anything else that's going to do that to donkeys in this. But we'll confirm it when we get back to the lab. We'll let you know.
Back at the lab, Pete's fears were confirmed when all the blood from the dying animals tested positive for trypanosomiasis. More and more of Maasai's animals are falling ill, and some are already too far gone for treatment.
We'll have problems if our animals die. They need food, and we have so many mouths to feed. I have many. 7 of my own. This is not drought. It's a disaster.
The rains are over, but for many of Maasai's herd, it's too late. They are by now so weak from infection that even the chill of a rainstorm can be enough to kill them off.
That's 15 animals we have lost in 1 week.
I counted 20.
Unaware of the dangers, Maasai and the other herders may unwittingly be killing their own animals. Eager to avert disaster, they've been buying cattle drugs from unlicensed traveling salesmen. More often than not, the wrong drugs are being given in the wrong doses. By giving too low a dose, they may be making things even worse by causing resistance to the drugs.
This one's got all the signs of Indiroba.
Peter Stevenson runs a regular clinic monitoring the health of the local herds.
I think they've taken blood off it.
Maasai's remaining animals are being pushed through to see how many more have been infected on the escarpment.
They're just looking to see if they can find any trypanosomes. How many other cattle are in this condition at the moment?
Half of them.
This is a cattle race and crush that we at Ketri have built with the group ranch so that we can follow cattle and get accurate information on the disease. The whole purpose of being here is that we're trying to work with pastoralists and develop better methods of controlling the disease and also the vector, the Tsetse fly. And when they were up the escarpment, did you give it any treatment then?
With no available vaccine, drugs do seem to be the best option.
With what? With terramycin and atomycin.
But a new and serious problem is that the parasites are becoming increasingly resistant to drugs.
He's given no Novidium or Veriva, nothing for trips. So I'm interested, Charles, the reason he gave atomycin rather than treatment for trips was because he saw swollen lymph nodes, was it?
Among other things, Dr. Stevenson is trying to build a picture of how extensive the misuse of drugs is and how this may be allowing to survive, with cattle getting repeated bouts of infection.
It's very pale mucous membrane there, Charles. Yeah. I suspect this is one of the animals that's been getting repeatedly infected and not fully recovering from the infection before it comes down with another bout of trypanosomiasis.
Some simple blood tests quickly establish just how many of Maasai's animals have become infected on the escarpment. Spinning the blood at high speed pushes the red blood cells to one end of the capillary tube. The fewer the red cells, the more anemic the animal, of how advanced the infection may be. The plasma, the clear part of the blood, is then tested for trypanosomes. This is the microscopic organism that's probably responsible for the biggest single loss of food production in Africa.
So Olympus is saying he's lost 350 cattle. That's a huge proportion of his herd over, what would it be, since drought began, which is really, we're talking about coming on for 2 years now. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
With all its shortcomings, treatment with drugs seems to be the best option for the Maasai herds.
Let's have a look at this trap.
But the fly trapping project had cleverly managed to prevent the tsetse fly problem occurring in the first place. So why did the Maasai leave the traps to fall apart?
I'm just interested in whether Maasai reckons he could repair this trap. Ask him whether he could repair it.
No, I would.
Why does he reckon it hasn't been repaired?
The project never sent anyone else to replace the people who left. So the traps just fell apart.
Okay, is it better to prevent disease in cattle, or is it better to wait till they're infected and then treat them with drugs? Which does he think is better?
It's better to prevent them from getting sick in the first place. If help comes to repair the traps, then we'll be able to prevent them from getting sick.
Does Maasai reckon that they need outside help to make this scheme work, or believe that the group ranch could do it themselves?
We cannot manage the problem on our own. We don't know how to, and wouldn't know where to begin, and wouldn't even know where to get the materials and the vehicle. So I'm telling you, we definitely need outside help.
So Charles asked Maasai if a vehicle was given to the group ranch, because at the moment the group ranch hasn't got a vehicle, and you need a vehicle to maintain these things in the thick bush. You can't walk through there with all your equipment. If the group ranch got a vehicle, would it really be used for looking after the traps? For driving up to Nairobi and buying drugs? I'm just interested. Ask Maasai.
I would like to think those responsible would use it for doing this work, but they might not. I can't speak for how others would use the vehicle. They might use it to go to Nairobi instead.
I reckon that's really sad. If someone else is doing the job for us, we don't feel we're part of it. We don't really feel we have the responsibility to do it. Someone else is doing it, and I just wonder whether that's what's happened here. I think we're all a bit responsible. We come down with what we think are good, new technical ideas, and we're enthusiastic about it. You tend to drive things yourself.
So the trapping project failed by not getting the Maasai themselves to take over the traps. They didn't see why they should be responsible for maintaining traps the agency had put in. With conditions getting worse, and so as not to miss out on the grab for their land, the Maasai themselves are now getting in on the act.
These are our new fields. We are staking our claim here. Now we too are cutting down the forest to plant crops. See, people from all over are coming in and claiming this land for themselves. We have fought with them, but now we have started doing what they do. Each of us claiming a piece of forest for himself. People coming here think that because we are herders and don't farm, they can just assume this land is free. They come from all over, all tribes from as far as Tanzania.
Maasai's two youngest wives have been clearing the land which he's claiming for himself.
If it wasn't for the fly traps that were here in the first place, we wouldn't have been able to clear this bush. It was so dense you couldn't get a cow in here.
But planting crops brings a new problem.
Since opening the fields, we have had trouble with wild animals. They just love our crops, especially the maize. So we are clearing the wild animals out of here. You have to sleep with a pile of stones at night time. If a herd of buffalo finds its way into a field, it will finish everything off in no time. Finished.
Maasai now divides his time between tending his cattle and the more strenuous life of a crop farmer.
The tsetse fly is no longer protecting the area. I don't think in any way the tsetse fly is still the guardian of the wilder parts of Africa.
Meanwhile, near Apatit, not long after the play was performed, Alfred has made a startling discovery.
They are back. Look what I just discovered. Just when we thought we were safe. Can you see them flying all around? Here is one. Caught it. Its poison is more powerful than a snake's. At least when a snake bites you, you can get an injection to cure it. With this, you spend months on your back and then you die. It doesn't matter who you are, teacher, school child, or mother, it will bite you. Even kids coming here to drink the water, they are here in the water. They are called Tsetse flies. That's what we call them.